North America, starting with Thomas Likeness in Edmonton, Alberta.
COVID-19 vaccine shipments to Canada dwindle to a trickle.
Josh Santillana in Toronto, Ontario, tells us about Ontario schools to resume in-person learning. Next, we have Eliza Gonzalez-Manglikmot in Washington, D.C.
New CDC requirements if you must travel during COVID-19.
Philip Toledo in Atlanta, Georgia.
Georgia plans to recruit, train, and retain educators.
Mila Simbulan in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania makes a historic $1.3 billion investment in public schools.
We have Lori Jarvina reports about Las Vegas celebrating Black History Month and North Las Vegas offering pop-up COVID-19 vaccination clinics. Danita Manawis in Dallas, Texas reports about Texas' announcement of its 2022 to 2023 biennium budget, the state's administration of almost 3 million vaccines, and Union Pacific donating locomotive to Texas A&M University in honor of late President George Bush Sr. Plus, for EBC Sports, Jay Roskides takes us to the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship in Lakeland, Florida. Tenny Samagi in New York reports about the Knicks falling short to the Heat and acquiring former MVP Derrick Rose from the Pistons. Plus, for tonight's roundtable, today is Send a Card to a Friend Day. Who have we reconnected and who do we wish to reconnect with during the pandemic? Our coverage begins now. Tens of thousands of protesters poured onto the streets of Yangon Sunday in the biggest rally yet against the Myanmar coup, as an internet blackout failed to stifle growing outrage at the military's ouster of elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Some estimates put the number of protesters in Yangon at 100,000, and there were reports of large demonstrations in other cities, with rallies condemning the coup that brought Myanmar's 10-year experiment with democracy to a crashing halt. Backed by a din of car horns, chanting protesters in Yangon held up banners saying "Justice for Myanmar," while others waved the signature red flags of Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy party as they marched to City Hall. Protesters announced that they would return to the streets at 10 a.m. local time on Monday, defying the state of emergency imposed by the military and indicating no let-up in their resistance to the coup. They also called on civil servants and people employed in other industries to not go to work and join the protest. Many flashed a three-finger salute inspired by the Hunger Games films, which became a symbol of resistance during the pro-democracy protests in Thailand last year. There was a large demonstration also in the capital, Naypyidaw, despite the heavy military presence there, while tens of thousands rallied against the coup in Mandalay, Myanmar's second biggest city. Both those protests included people in armadas of motorcycles waving flags and banners as they rode through the cities. There were also demonstrations in Malamine City and the Magway region. The surge in popular dissent over the weekend overcame a nationwide internet blockade similar in magnitude to an earlier shutdown that coincided with the arrest of Suu Kyi and other senior leaders on Monday. Online calls to protest have prompted bold displays of defiance. Including the nightly deafening clamor of people banging pots and pans, a practice traditionally associated with driving out evil spirits. Monitoring service NetBlock said internet access was partially restored on some mobile networks in Myanmar Sunday afternoon, but social media platforms remained blocked, and it was unclear how long the connectivity would last. President Joe Biden on Saturday launched a series of conversations with ordinary Americans by calling a woman who lost her job due to the pandemic in an effort to showcase his direct contact with his fellow citizens. Due to COVID-19, the conversation was held via telephone from the Oval Office in Washington to Michelle, a mother from Roseville, California, who lost her job at a startup company because of the economic crisis sparked by the pandemic. She had written to Biden to tell him about her struggles and her search for a new job. Take a look.
Hello.
Michelle.
Hi, Mr. President.
I was laid off in July. My company had reorganized because of COVID. It's the first time I've been laid off in my life. On Facebook, I connect with others who are going through the same thing. I I decided to write a letter to President Biden to tell him how I felt. He read it, and then he called me.
How are you, Michelle?
Well, I wrote to you because, I was laid off in July, and it's just been a tough time as far as trying to find work.
Working is part of who you are.
My dad used to say, a job is about a lot more than a paycheck.
It's about your dignity, it's about your respect, it's about your place in the community. I've been saying a long time, the idea that we think we can keep businesses open and moving and thriving without dealing with this pandemic.
It's just a non-starter. We're putting together a plan that provides for emergency relief to people in desperate need now, everything from mortgage payments to unemployment insurance to rental subsidies to food security for children.
It provides for some small and medium-sized businesses to be able to open.
We're so glad that you are. We're so glad that we have you focusing on that.
Well, I think we're going to get 100 million shots in the next 100 days in people's arms.
I finally got my parents an appointment. They're getting their vaccines today.
Oh, great.
I admire your sense of responsibility and the desire to work.
What I related to you was when you talked about your father and how he had
Felt like he lost his dignity when he lost his job. And I think more than an income is that feeling needed and having a place to go.
So I can't tell you how appreciative I am that you called me.
Can my daughter say hello to you?
Of course. Mr. President, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So nice to speak to you.
You should be very, very proud of your mom.
That's why I called when I read the letter. I admire her determination, her commitment. It's pretty impressive.
And so are you.
Thank you.
Keep the faith.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
With this new conversation series, Biden is seeking to show his empathy and to mark a break from his predecessor, Donald Trump, who was accused by critics of not caring about the fate of millions of Americans affected by America's health and economic crisis. Biden's phone calls are meant to be a modern-day iteration in the era of social media of the radio fireside chats held by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the 1930s as a way to invite himself into American homes. And now an overview of today's COVID-19 numbers. According to the Coronavirus Resource Center of Johns Hopkins University and Medicine, as of 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday, February 7, 2021, the number of cases of COVID-19 reported worldwide is now more than 105,945,000. Top three on the list of countries with recorded cases, with U.S. more than 26.9 million, India more than 10.8 million, and Brazil more than 9.4 million. Sadly, this virus has now already claimed more than 2,312,000 lives worldwide. Top three countries with the most number of COVID-19 related deaths are U.S. more than 462,000, Brazil more than 230,000, and Mexico more than 165,000. Now for COVID news, China delivers 600,000 doses of its Sinopharm coronavirus vaccine to ally Cambodia on Sunday, making the kingdom the latest country to use Chinese jabs despite concerns about their efficacy compared to Western alternatives. Cambodian leader Hun Sen announced last month that China would donate 1 million doses of its coronavirus vaccine to the kingdom, which will cover 500,000 people because 2 doses are required. On Sunday, Hun Sen greeted the arrival of the first batch at Phnom Penh's International Airport. It's unclear when the remaining doses are scheduled to touch down. Hun Sen said Cambodia owes deep gratitude to China. 68-year-old Hun Sen, one of the world's longest-serving leaders, originally planned to receive the first shot of the vaccine, but he backed away from that idea after learning it's aimed at people aged between 18 to 59 years old. The premier said the first people to get the jobs include frontline health workers, teachers, soldiers, the premier's bodyguards, and officials around the kingdom. Cambodia plans to vaccinate at least 10 million of its 16 million population with shots from both China's Sinopharm and Sinovac, as well as the British-Swedish AstraZeneca. Cambodia has weathered the pandemic relatively unscathed, registering only 474 cases with no deaths, though experts say the low numbers are likely due to a lack of testing. In New York, defying the cold and rain, hundreds of people bundled up in thick coats came to get vaccinated Friday in the famous Yankees baseball stadium in the Bronx, a New York borough that has been particularly badly hit by the coronavirus pandemic. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said the positivity rate in the Bronx is the highest in all of New York's 5 boroughs. It was at 6.67% Friday, double the rate in the wealthier area of Manhattan. That's why the authorities in this traditionally Democratic bastion of the city decided to reserve the vaccinations on offer at the stadium exclusively for residents of the Bronx. Since the start of the pandemic last March, the death rate in New York's Black and Latino communities had been double that of their white counterparts. That same racial disparity has played out across the United States, where more than 453,000 people have died of the disease. Yet these same minorities have, until now, received fewer vaccinations than other communities. In New York, figures released on Sunday show that among the 500,000 doses of vaccine already administered, only 15% went to Hispanic people, even though they represent 30% of the population of 8 million. And 11% went to African Americans, who make up 25% of the population. Mayor Bill de Blasio said this is about equity, this is about fairness, this is about protecting people who need the most protection, because the Bronx is one of the places that bore the brunt of this crisis. Of the 15,000 appointments on offer in the coming days, some 13,000 have been allocated on Friday. Back to Washington, U.S. President Joe Biden seized on feeble U.S. employment data to argue that the world's largest economy needs his $1.9 trillion pandemic relief package, which cleared a key Senate hurdle without support from the Republican opposition.
Of Republicans, I've met with Republicans. There's some really fine people who want to get something done, but they're just not willing to go as far as I think we have to go. I've told both Republicans and Democrats that's my preference, to work together. But if I have to choose between getting help right now to Americans who are hurting so badly and getting bogged down in a lengthy negotiation, or compromising on a bill that's up to the crisis, that's an easy choice. I'm going to help the American people who are hurting now. It puts $160 billion into our national COVID-19 strategy, which includes more money for manufacturing, distribution, and setting up of vaccine sites, everything that's needed to get the vaccines into people's arms. The American Rescue Plan is going to keep the commitment of $2,000, $600 has already gone out, $1,400 checks to people who need it. This is money directly in people's pockets. It has rental assistance to keep people in their homes rather than being thrown out in the street. It's got money to help us open our schools safely. There's money for child care, for paid leave. It gets needed resources of state and local governments to prevent layoffs of essential personnel. The biggest risk is not going too big. If we go too small. We've been here before. When this nation hit the Great Recession that Barack and I inherited in 2009, I was asked to lead the effort on the Economic Recovery Act to get it passed.
Up next, reports from Edmonton, Alberta, Toronto, Ontario, and Washington, D.C. Eagle News America continues. Stay with us.
Happy peeps! Keep on watching Happy Time from Monday to Friday at 12 noon, only here on Net25.
Happy time, happy time.
Factual.
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
Timely information. Balanced. Not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Aguila Pilipinas. A 1-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Aguila Provincia. Tune into Mata ng Aguila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Matang Agila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science, and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to Thanks our help outdoor
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Anna Queen in Las Vegas. Shipments to Canada of COVID-19 vaccine are coming into the country in fewer doses than hoped. In Edmonton, Bureau Chief Thomas Likeness is with us tonight with the details. Thomas?
Thank you, Anna. Well, despite getting fewer doses of vaccines from drug companies, Prime Minister Trudeau continues to promise that all Canadians who want to be immunized will be able to get the vaccine by the end of September at the latest. You know, Trudeau loves to brag about how Canada's ordered more doses per capita than most other countries, but what he keeps downplaying is that tens of thousands of empty syringes are sitting on the shelves of vaccination centers gathering dust because there's no inoculant to fill them with. Last week, Trudeau tap danced around reporters' questions about the smaller shipments. He's suggesting that people shouldn't be worried about the delays in the government's vaccine rollout.
That's why there's a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of noise going on right now. That's why I want to reassure Canadians that we are on track.
But we keep hearing about more delays. So far this month, we've received just a small fraction of what was ordered. Big Pharma, well, it's hung up the sold out sign and we wait until the shelves are restocked. In response, Trudeau has been running up the government's international long distance charges as he's constantly calling the CEOs of both Pfizer and Moderna.
I speak almost every week with the CEOs of these vaccine companies, and they have assured me that they will meet their obligations, their contractual obligations, to deliver 6 million doses to Canadians by the end of March.
Well, the promises sound reassuring, but they don't take into account the issue of vaccine nationalism. And this trend is growing in Europe, where countries there want to make sure their populations are vaccinated in a timely manner. And that means exports could be restricted to meet those goals. The European Union has a list of countries that it exempts from export controls, but Canada is not on it. Canadian officials say the EU has verbally said that Canada's vaccine orders will be respected, but there's nothing in writing and no timeline. The Prime Minister is unwilling to reveal details of our contracts with the vaccine manufacturers. He won't even tell the provincial premiers about the details. So we don't have a lot of transparency there. Trudeau, it seems, is willing to place his trust in the word of people who are telling us everything will be fine. But is it? So far, we've vaccinated only 2.8% of the population. Planning to immunize a bigger percentage of people becomes harder when health officials can't count on delivery of the vaccine. And how do we compare to other countries? Well, you know, Israel's right out front at 62.1%. The UK, 16.9%. Our neighbors to the south, you folks there, the United States, 4 times as many. You're at 11%. Our 2.8% is pretty dismal for a developed country. So while we wait for our turn to be immunized, I wish you all good health. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you, Thomas. You know, how are people feeling about the government's handling of the vaccine rollout?
One word sums it up: frustration. a lot of frustration among everybody involved. The provincial governments say the constant delays make it difficult to plan vaccination schedules. And this is critical because of the 2 approved vaccines that require 2 doses. They must be done on a scheduled basis. For healthcare providers, it's hurry up and wait. And for people waiting to be immunized, there's just growing skepticism about the federal government's ability to get the vaccine into people's arms in a timely manner. People are split about 50-50 on the effectiveness of the government's rollout program. And the situation is beginning to affect the government in the public opinion polls. Not a lot at this point, but definitely a downward trend. Now, the only saving grace is that more vaccines may be approved. Right now, we've got AstraZeneca waiting in the wings, as is one from Johnson & Johnson. Anna?
Yes, I was going to mention that. That's the only positive thing that could be coming your way with the Johnson & Johnson, and as you mentioned, AstraZeneca waiting for approval of the emergency use. And as it happened with Pfizer and Moderna, hopefully that will be coming soon. Hopefully next week, right? I mean, it's difficult because, as you mentioned, there's no transparency. I mean, one of the things that we encountered here, I can say for Nevada, was the lag of reporting. So it's not even that. I mean, in your case, there's really just not enough vaccine to go around.
No, and it is not coming in. They're again, the delays. Some of those delays could have been left at the feet of previous governments. 3 decades ago, we had a big lab that produced vaccines very inexpensively, but the government sold it off in a drive to get rid of crown corporations, privatize things. This left us with no ability to manufacture them domestically. Pfizer doesn't want to come in here to build a plant, or Moderna or anybody else, because the Canadian market just isn't big enough. We got 33 million people here. You have 10 times that in your country. So from a business point of view, it doesn't make sense. And with the government out of the picture, we have no ability to manufacture vaccine. Now, they say they're going to get it restarted, but it's going to take a year to ramp that up. And the other issue is, did we wait too long? Did we wait too long to order from Moderna and Pfizer? Back in the spring, when the pandemic was just underway, Canada was negotiating with China to produce vaccines. But by the middle of the summer, that deal came to an end. And by then, we were at the back of the line placing orders with other manufacturers. Now here we are, supply outstripping demand. And you'll remember this. We're like the people last spring trying to buy toilet paper. We're just staring at empty shelves. Anna?
Well, Thomas, I'm sorry to hear that. But hopefully, I mean, as you mentioned, they could have ordered early, right? Secured some of those vaccine. In your opinion, could there have been anything that the government could have done to prevent these delays?
Well, again, instead of putting all our eggs into that one basket with China, because they enticed us that, yeah, we'll develop some of it in a lab in Montreal. We should have been ordering. And again, just securing vaccines is kind of meaningless. That means at some point we will get those millions of doses. We need delivery times tied to securing. Securing doesn't necessarily give you a timeline. Anna?
Well, thank you, Thomas, for your report. We hope that it will get better there for you in Canada.
Thank you, Anna.
Stick around for our roundtable a little later in the show.
I'll be here.
Thank you, Thomas. Almost a year since schools in Canada closed its doors to in-campus instruction, the province of Ontario is about to resume in-person learning in several of its schools. Eagle News correspondent Josh Santillana has the details.
Here in Ontario, Canada, in-person learning will resume starting Monday, February 8th for school boards outside the Greater Toronto Area. For the 3 COVID hotspot regions, Toronto, Mississauga, and York, students will go back to the classroom on Tuesday, February the 16th. Here's Ontario Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, with the announcement.
We made a commitment to Ontario parents that we would get your child back to class, but it had to be safe. You know, we're the only province in the country to have cautiously reopened our schools as we have, but we followed the medical advice. And now, with the unanimous voice of all local medical officers of health, with the full support of the chief medical officer of health and some of the best pediatric hospitals in the country, we are able to reopen our schools now that community transmissions are down, with strong protocols in place and stricter screening and better province-wide access to asymptomatic testing.
In-person learning has always been a contentious topic in Ontario since it closed down its schools during the first wave. Virtual learning, though an obvious alternative, has posed inequitable challenges for educators and students, according to Children's Mental Health Ontario. When it comes to online learning, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Every child engages in learning in their own way, and teachers are developing a whole new set of skills in order to engage the students. The situation is really challenging for everyone. The Elementary Teachers Foundation of Ontario gave their response to Minister Lecce's announcement. Take a listen. The Ford government's plan to reopen schools in Ontario without adequate layers of protection in place risks future closures and a possible third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. To safely reopen schools and to keep them open, which is everyone's goal, the province must prioritize safety over political grandstanding. ETFO President Sam Hammond further added, ETFO and others have said this on numerous occasions, but it is worth repeating since it takes the government so long to listen. While the measures they have finally put in place will help, they are not sufficient. Schools still need smaller classes, mandatory masking for kindergarten, and CO2 monitors and portable air purification units in every classroom. Sick Kids Canada recommends that a daily in-person classroom setting is the best model as it gives children more consistency and stability, but with a call for a very important factor to be considered. An important factor to consider in this respect is emerging evidence indicating inequalities in the social and economic burden of COVID-19, which may further disadvantage children or youth living in areas with higher infection burden, where educational inequality and barriers to online learning may be more pronounced, and equities that disproportionately impact Black, Indigenous, people of color, and other disadvantaged groups in Ontario. In Toronto, Joshua Santayana, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Josh, for your report. Still to come, stories from Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, and Las Vegas, Nevada. This is Eagle News America. Stay with us.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times. Tayong mga Filipino, likas na palabati. Sanay rin tayong makipagkamay. Pero dahil na rin sa COVID pandemic, isinusulong ang pagbati na hindi na kailangan pang makipagkamay. Ang pambansang pagbati. Ito ay ang pagdampi ng kanang palad sa gitnang bahagi ng dibdib, kasabay ng bahagyang pagyukod ng ulo o paibabang tingin, at pagsambit ng mga salitang nagpapahayag ng pagbati, paggalang o pagpupugay. Pagkatapos nito ay ang pag-angat ng ulo ng nakangiti at nakatingin sa mata ng binabati. Pambansang pagbati, pagpapakita ng paggalang, kababaang loob at pagiging sensero nating mga Filipino.
It says the best defense is still containment.
We are in uncharted territory.
Guideline volume 450. FI on to 100%. Standing by. Construction.
Last week, ABC correspondent Eliza Gonzalez-Manglikmot reported on travelers required to wear masks on all forms of public transport. Recently, the CDC released new travel requirements. In Washington, D.C., here's Eliza again with more details. Eliza?
Thank you, Anna. Good Sunday evening to you and a good Monday morning to our viewers on the other side of the globe. That's correct. While the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, still advises people to avoid travel, it recently released new travel requirements if one cannot avoid doing so during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the CDC website, all air passengers coming to the United States, including U.S. citizens, are required to have a negative COVID-19 test result or documentation of recovery from COVID-19 before they board a flight to the United States. And like what we reported last week, masks are required on planes, buses, trains, and other forms of public transportation. This requirement applies to travel into, within, or out of the U.S. Masks are also required to be worn in transportation hubs, such as airports and stations. The current CDC travel alert is cases are extremely high, avoid travel. However, here are some things the CDC says to consider if you are thinking of traveling. Are you someone in your household or someone you will be visiting at increased risk for getting very sick from COVID-19? Are hospitals in your community or your destination overwhelmed with patients who have the disease? Does your home or destination have requirements or restrictions for travelers? And during the 14 days before your travel, have you or those you are visiting had close contact with people? Questions to answer, but if the answer to any of these is yes, the CDC advises to delay your travel. But if you must travel, the CDC suggests the following. If you are eligible, get fully vaccinated for COVID-19 and then wait 2 weeks after getting your last dose before traveling. Get tested with the viral test 1 to 3 days before your travel and take a copy of your test results with you. Wear a mask in public settings, avoid crowds, and remember to social distance. Wash your hands often, avoid contact with anyone who is sick, bring extra and mouth. Some very basic reminders. One more very important reminder, though, is do not travel if you test positive for COVID-19. Now, Anna, for some weather update, it's 34 degrees Fahrenheit or 1 degree Celsius in the nation's capital. In Washington, Eliza Gonzalez-Manglikmot, Eagle News, we live in interesting times. Back to you, Anna. Well, Anna, I have not, but don't get me wrong. I would love to travel. In fact, I have family in California and in the Philippines that I would love to visit in person, but I think the risks really outweigh the benefits. I mean, it would be great to see friends and family, but it would be terrible seeing them get sick because the virus spread due to traveling from one part of the country to another. That's why I'm thankful for video conferencing technology. You know, and I have friends and family that I regularly speak with, and I mean, it's a weekly schedule. For example, I have a group of friends from various parts of the Philippines and some here living in the West Coast, and I'm here on the East Coast, and we log on to a video chat. and we talk for hours, as in hours. And I think that's a good thing, considering. Anna?
That's really nice, Eliza. So that kind of makes up for not being able to, visit them and seeing them face to face. And that kind of ties into to our roundtable discussion a little later in the show with send a card to a friend day. So you can tell us a little bit more about that. But thank you, Eliza, for your report. And hopefully this, with the whole traveling situation, we're hoping that people are not, jumping into it too soon because of the vaccine, right? The vaccine effort. I think we just need to give that a little bit more time. So
we do.
Yes, you're choosing the right to be safer. Thank you, Eliza. We'll see you in a little bit in the show.
See you, Anna.
Governor Brian Kemp pledges to restore funding to Georgia's school systems to recruit, train, and retain educators in the state. Bureau Chief Philip Toledo joins us this evening. Philip?
Thanks, Anna. That's right. Last week, Governor Brian Kemp unveiled his plan to strengthen the teacher pipeline here in the state of Georgia. Through a press conference and a guest column in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, he praised the resiliency of educators and his proposals to recruit, train, and ultimately retain teachers. Some research studies report that almost half of all teachers leave within 5 years. And within that group, minority teachers are leaving the fastest, which means teachers don't always reflect the student populations that they educate, or in other words, it's an issue of representation in the classroom. Now, the governor did pledge to restore funding to school systems, even with the financial challenges of the current pandemic. This legislative package he proposed would also give priority registration to military veterans. So those vets who are willing to teach would have a chance to get certified more quickly. He then offered his plan on how to increase representation in the classroom. Let's take a look.
A teacher that inspired us, who pushed us forward and made us believe in ourselves. Our historically black colleges and universities play a significant role in teacher preparation, and they should play a major role in teacher placement. I want to ensure they lead the charge to create ways to get more minority teachers into our classrooms so students from all backgrounds and ethnicities can see themselves in their teachers. Building on our teacher recruitment efforts, we are putting in law that the Professional Standards Commission must work with our historically black colleges and universities to create innovative programs that get more minority teachers into the field.
Additionally, it will allow retired teachers the ability to return to the classroom in order to fill high-need areas of instruction. There are measures also to focus the university instruction on the fundamentals of reading instruction: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and reading comprehension. Finally, to help address retention, the governor proposed that the Georgia Teacher of the Year would serve as a special advisor to the State Board of Education. That way, the voice of teachers would be heard during the decision-making at that level. Now, after such a public focus on the education system, the governor came under fire with reports that the Atlanta Board of Education passed a resolution calling on the governor to include teachers in the current vaccination plans. Atlanta Public Schools has been virtual and only recently started phasing back to in-person learning. The governor made his response letter public, stating he absolutely would follow through on what the APS was asking for, if only there wasn't a lack of supply coming from the federal government. He cited what we reported about a week or so ago, that the current population of healthcare workers, long-term care residents, and the elderly most at risk for serious illness from COVID-19 far exceeds what has been allocated to the state so far. Some who want to be vaccinated, they have trouble getting the vaccination through crashed websites. The phone lines are busy. And Kemp states that would only be made worse if we added almost 500,000 educators and staff to the current eligibility criteria. He then again reiterated the value he places on educators as heroes to all Georgians. In Atlanta, Georgia, Philip Toledo, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you, Philip. The public back and forth between the governor and Atlanta Public Schools is definitely interesting. Did the governor say anything else to their request?
Yes, Anna, interesting is a good word to describe going through that. I was reading through his response today, and, he cites the reports that the CDC came out with recently that vaccination in and of itself is not necessary for students and teachers to return to in-person learning. He recounted all the money that the state has spent to help ensure adequate PPE and other resources to help support students going back into school. Now, like I said, the Atlanta Public Schools, they've been virtual much longer than several of the other large school districts here in the Atlanta area. And, what I found was personally interesting was that he commented that he and State Health Commissioner Dr. Toomey did not mandate a school reopening, and they left those decisions up to the individual school districts. And even if they may have disagreed with those decisions, he didn't criticize them. And then he, tried to work with them, or at least that's what he stated in his letter.
Thank you, Philip. That's the same situation here in Las Vegas. Clark County is one of the biggest school districts actually in the nation. And so we're dealing with the same thing. We reported last week that we're also transitioning to in-person, although it's going to be hybrid. So again, it's one of those situations that we can talk about all day, right? And there is no one right answer, unfortunately. So
that's right. There's many sides to that coin.
Exactly, Philip. There's you can't please everybody, and it can't work for everybody all at the same time. We just have to work together. Thank you, Philip, for that report. And we'll, talk to you again later in the show when we have our roundtable discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anna.
Governor Tom Wolf announces that the state of Pennsylvania is making a first $1.3 billion investment in its public schools. In Swarthmore, Bureau Chief Myla Simbulan has the details. Myla?
That's right, Anna. Continuing to make the future of Pennsylvania students a priority, Governor Tom Wolf's 2021 agenda makes a historic $1.3 billion investment in public schools and creates fairness in education funding while cutting taxes for working families and businesses. Here's Governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Wolf. Take a look.
So I'm proposing that we run all current state basic education funding through the fair funding formula, all of it. That way, funding will finally reflect the actual costs of educating the students in every district. To make it successful, I'm also proposing a $1.3 billion investment in education funding. $1.1 billion of this investment will ensure that no school, not one school district in the Commonwealth, will lose a single dollar in state support. That's the hold harmless. Every school district in the Commonwealth will be held harmless. And an additional, on the top of the $1.1 billion, an additional $200 million to ensure that every school district gets a funding increase. The growing districts in big cities and rural communities will finally get their fair share, and we can help communities ease the pressure on property taxpayers. This plan also ensures that districts with shrinking enrollment are protected from a cut and will actually get an increase this year. Remember that extra $200 million. Because no matter where you live, every student deserves an opportunity to succeed.
Pennsylvania has one of the most unfair school funding systems in the country, and the fair funding formula created in 2016 applies only to new investments. Last year, only 11% or $700 million of state funding ran through it. The remaining 89% or $5.5 billion is still distributed based on student enrollment in 1992, without considering shifts in student counts or actual costs school districts face today. Urban and rural school districts with growing student enrollment must fill the funding gap with frequent property tax increases, adding to the burden of homeowners and businesses. The governor's proposal runs all existing basic education funding, $6.2 billion, plus a $200 million increase this year through the fair funding formula. Separately, an additional $1.15 billion will ensure that no school losses a single dollar in state resources from using the formula. The governor is also proposing to hold charter schools accountable to provide a quality education while preserving school choice, saving school districts $229 million annually and putting students first. Addressing the skyrocketing costs of charter and cyber charter schools, the plan proposes comprehensive charter school law reform to align taxpayer spending to actual charter school costs. The state's special education funding formula would apply to charter schools as it already does for traditional public schools, saving $99 million a year. The establishment of a statewide cyber school tuition rate would save school districts an additional $130 million a year and end the practice of school districts paying vastly different tuition rates for the same education. The governor's 2021 budget also provides increases of $200 million for special education, $25 million for pre-K counts to serve 2,800 more children, $5 million for Head Start supplemental assistance to serve 471 more children, and $11 million for early intervention to serve 2,000 more children aged 3 to 5. The plan calls for setting the starting teacher salary to at least $45,000 a year to attract more quality candidates and address the teacher shortage. Right now, Anna, in Swarthmore, it's 36 degrees Fahrenheit or 2 degrees Celsius with clear skies. In Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, Mila Stimulan, Eagle News, will live in interesting times. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you, Mila, for that extensive report. According to Governor Wolf, there'll be tax cuts for working families and businesses as part of his 2021 agenda. Can you tell us quickly about a little bit more about it?
So, and under the governor's plan, the special tax forgiveness credit is expanded to reduce or eliminate taxes for working class families. Overall, 67% of Pennsylvanians will get a tax cut or pay the same. Families with 2 children making $50,000 will have their taxes eliminated, and families making less than $84,000 will receive a tax cut. This proposal increases the allowances for tax forgiveness to $15,000 for single filers and $30,000 for married filers and $10,000 allowance for each dependent. Filers with incomes at or below these thresholds will receive 100% tax forgiveness, and the percentage of tax forgiveness declines by 1 percentage point for each 500 above the threshold for 100% forgiveness. Anna?
Thank you, Mila, for that report. And we'll see in a little bit in our roundtable discussion. Up next, ABC Sports and tonight's roundtable about a Send a Card to a Friend Day, reconnecting during pandemic. This is Eagle News America. Stay with us.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net 25.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Happy Peeps! Abangan niyo po ako sa Happy Time ngayong Lunes, alas 12 ng tanghali. Dito lang sa Net 25.
Happy time, happy time.
There are a lot of full contact sports out there, but one of the most brutal is what the competitors in bare knuckle fighting championship do. The name says it all. Our EBC Florida team covered their recent event held in Lakeland, Florida. Jay Rosquitas reports.
Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships made its way to Lakeland, Florida for their Knuckle Mania event. Billed as their most stacked card ever, it did not disappoint. Heavy action and lots of punishment were dished out throughout the 8 undercard bouts, and especially in the 3 headline bouts. Chris Lieben, Dat Nguyen, and Britton Hart were victors of the featured matches. Lieben made it known that this would be his last fight, and he went out with a bang, winning in spectacular fashion with a clean left to the face of Quentin Henry for a knockout in the first round.
It was a beautiful way for me to cap my career. You know, long time in combat sports. It's bittersweet, but being part of this organization, finishing my fight with my career with a bare knuckle knockout is, I mean, there's nothing else I could add to it. You know, you grow up, you move out of your parents' house. You know, it's kind of the same thing with being a martial artist. You know, you train, you're part of a lineage, you compete for that, and then eventually you move out, you start your own gym, you start training your own guys, you know, and that's what I want to do. It's time for me to do that.
The second main event featured Dat Nguyen versus reigning lightweight champion Johnny Bedford. Both of these undefeated fighters went toe-to-toe for the entire 5 rounds, and the crowd loved every minute of it. During the course of the fight, Dat would land the cleaner and more significant blows, which led to a unanimous decision victory for the new 135-pound champion.
I fought the best Johnny Bedford that was, you know, like he said, he was in the best shape possible, and he came to fight. And he surprised me a lot because I hit him so hard and he stood right there and came right back. So, you know, like I said, I was going to be right in front of his face, and that's what I did. People like to see stand up fighting, real fighting, toe to toe. That's what true men do. True champions men do. Fight toe to toe, standing up, not down there and do. I mean, I respect a lot of sports, don't get me wrong. I grew up doing wrestling on it. But true men earn respect, standing up, fighting each other toe to toe.
Paige Van Zandt, formerly of UFC and Dancing with the Stars fame, made her BKFC debut and headlined Knuckle Mania versus Britton Hart. Van Zandt was favored to win, but a slow start doomed her chances. Britton was the aggressor for most of the fight and was able to connect and land more punches through each round. Van Zandt picked up the pace and landed some heavy shots in the 5th and final round, but it was way too late to mount a comeback, losing via unanimous decision.
I came out here to prove that I'm tired of being an underdog, and you know, if you work hard enough, you're able to do it. I've never been hit as hard as Paige Van Zandt hit, so I'll give her that. So everyone got it right. Whoever said that girl had power, they were not lying. That was the hardest I've ever been hit, and I've been hit by a grown man, unfortunately, a few times in my life, and they didn't even hit as hard as Paige Van Zandt did. So, you know, I'm ready for the belt. That's what's next. I know that question's coming, so I'm just going to answer for you. I want that belt now. I'm ready. I'm 2-2 now. I've earned it. I've worked hard for it, and I think I'm ready for that title shot now.
In Lakeland, Florida, Jay Rosquitas, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Jay. Now, after handing the Portland Trail Blazers a loss Saturday, the New York Knicks were looking to extend their winning streak to 8-3 as they hosted the Miami Heat. Tenny Sumaga reports the result of the matchup as well as some trade news.
The New York Knicks fall short to the Miami Heat 109-103 in Sunday's matinee at Madison Square Garden. Coach Tom Thibodeau and Julius Randle break down what happened to the Knicks in the second half.
We never got established defensively from the start of the game, so we knew it would be an energy game. they're a different team, obviously, when Jimmy plays. And so offensively, I liked us, particularly in the first half. But defensively, we got to be a lot better. There were several possessions in which we had pretty good defense, but we didn't finish our defense. And against a team like that, they're going to keep moving, and you got to make sure that you play it throughout the clock, and you got to finish it with the shot challenge and the rebound. And, we didn't do that, and that's what you need to do.
We initially got off to a good start, and then, they started moving the ball, and they, credit to them, they shot the ball really well from the three-point line. We've all year done a great job of defending the three, and they shot the ball well, and just moved back, cut stuff, certain stuff like that, where, we weren't our typical defense and they didn't feel us, and just kind of set a tone for the game, and it was back and forth. And, a couple possessions down the stretch was critical, and, they took advantage of it and won the game. But
Derrick Rose returns to New York for the second time in his career. The Knicks acquired the former NBA MVP from the Detroit Pistons. Rose played under Coach Thibodeau during his tenure with the Chicago Bulls and the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Thank you, Tenny. Now on to our roundtable discussion. February 7th is National Send a Card to a Friend Day. So whether you buy them or make them, sending cards the old-fashioned way, more often than not, is a guaranteed way to brighten someone's day. I know we have email, we have social media, and nowadays, you can easily text or post something to a friend, but really, it's not the same, right? So let's ask our team here tonight, when was the last time you sent out a greeting card to someone, or when was the last time you received one, and from who? How about we start with Thomas?
Anna, you're right. Email cards just don't cut it. Last cards I gave were for my wife's birthday, which is just about coming up in a couple of months. And of course, our anniversary, both in April. The last one I received was last fall on my birthday. But yeah, people just don't send cards anymore. Anna?
That's so nice, Thomas. Now, how about Eliza? You received a card or sent out a card?
Yeah, the last few cards I received was a few weeks ago for my birthday. So I received several. And the last ones I sent to was a few weeks ago too, 2 days before my birthday. That's for my twin daughters. I gave them both their birthday cards.
That's right. Well, belated happy birthday again. How about Philip? Philip, when was the last time you either sent out a card or received a card in the mail?
Yeah, Anna, just like Tom over there, it's mostly, I don't know, I can't remember the last time I actually, sent one in the mail, but it's mostly just been exchanges, between us family members here in the house. I know for my wife's birthday, and one thing that we do is we always get one on behalf of our son. And I have my Father's Day card here where you can see maybe his little scribbles there.
Aww.
So...
It's definitely a nice tradition, to start, right? Start
Absolutely.
them young. Now, Myla, what about you? When was the last time you either received or sent out a greeting card? And to who?
I guess just like everyone, it's been a tradition, even in my family, to give out cards on our birthdays or special occasions. Even getting good grades, we give out cards here at home. But one thing that I sent through mail, where I put a stamp on it, is sadly it was a sympathy card that I had to send. And receiving a card through mail as well is from my aunt in California. She's like 60 plus years old, and she still likes sending us cards every now and then, especially on our birthdays.
Thank you, Myla. Well, same here. I know we have a few more minutes. I mean, just a short time to go. But for me, it was sending out thank you cards to friends and family recently as well. Well, a group of people who we can send greeting cards to are those we salute every time at the end of each broadcast, our frontliners, first responders, and essential workers. So let's join together now in applauding them. We appreciate each and every one of you. That is today's Eagle News America. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is Anna Kui. We live in interesting times.